Well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming to the next installment of Just Three Things. I'm Curt. I'm the Associate Director of this Center for Visual Expression. A lovely colleague, Jason Helms, who's the director, is behind us, looking at his phone, so paying attention to me. I'm teasing, of course. So I'll get into the nuts and bolts of the presentation in a moment, but I just wanted to let you know that we're here for you well outside today. So we have programs like this a few times a semester. You're always welcome to attend. But if you're working on individual projects for your job, for a class project, whatever it may be, if it involves video, web, infographics, audio, any kind of digital component tool, we're here to help you with those kind of projects. So, and whatever stage you're at, we can help you navigate your way. So if you have something in mind you want some help with, if you just look for our request reserve link, which is pretty much under a header here, just send us a quick email, let us know what you're thinking about, and we'll make an appointment to talk to you. If you want to kind of explore some of the things that we've done in the past, resources, there's a lot of teaching. We focus mostly on teaching, but we can help people in different situations as well. So there's a lot of things that I want to point you to for your own interest and exploration. So we are more than just a pop-up for today's workshop. We've been around for over 10 years, and we're happy to support you over the next 10 years and beyond. Okay, so this page here, I apologize, there's probably a very bad flare on the screen that many of you are seeing. We'll address that this summer when we get the classroom model. So if you're having problems seeing the screen, you can go to the website on your own machine, or you're welcome to move to a different place in the room that might help you. Okay, so this will be a very entry-level workshop. So I'm assuming that you really have no knowledge or experience with HTML or CSS. So if you have some fun, if you have a little bit, you might get bored out quickly because we're starting very fundamental. But I find this kind of work fascinating, so if you want to move beyond what we did today with the project in mind, I'm happy to talk to you about things that you might do to develop the project. But this is, we're talking specifically about kind of like the foundational languages for web design. So when a browser opens up on your computer screen, first and foremost, it is reading the HTML and CSS to give you the visual information that you're getting. So it's kind of structured information. So just first of all, what is HTML and what is CSS? What do those words stand for? They're initials. And I'm kind of fighting a cold myself, so my voice is not optimal at the moment, so I apologize. But what does HTML stand for? What does CSS stand for? Okay, I bet you knew that before you came to it. Okay, so HTML, give that a mark if I can. Stands for hypertext, that's the HT, markup, is the M, language. And what does CSS stand for? Somebody else besides John. Anyone? Yeah?
Cascading style sheet?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, can someone then explain what that's all that means? What is hypertext? What does it mean to mark up? We can understand language as some sort of system of characters that we could use to communicate instructions from point A to point B. But what is hypertext and what is the markup? What does it mean to mark up? You all probably use volumes of hypertext every single day of your lives. And you probably have for all of your computer-based lives, probably. Depending on your age, at least since 1995, you've been using hypertext and gobs. So what is it? It's text that is hyper, right? Text that does something. text that will take you someplace else, interactive text. Right? So the web is a system of websites that are linked together. We get to each other, we get to the sites through the hypertext link. But also, a website is also a kind of small web where pages internally are linked together. Right? And that's possible because of hypertext, because we have the possibility to turn certain links, certain sentences or certain phrases from just static text to interactive text that can do something, take you someplace else, to a different page, to a different source, to a different file of some kind. Okay? CSS then stands for Cascading Style Sheet. The cascading is not so important, but the important word here right here is style. So, can anyone say why we need both or what each one's for? They work very well together. They're very compatible. They're supremely compatible. Their syntaxes are a bit different, and we'll look at that in a few minutes. But what is the purpose of each? You want to have a sense of that. What is HTML for and what's CSS for?
Standardizing the language, standardizing the use.
Okay, I mean, it's a standard language that can be shared across web developers. It's standard in that Firefox, Safari, Chrome, all kind of browsers you might consider using will all basically know what to do with the information you're putting into those files. Right? So it's accepted. So it's a universal language for web development. So HTML basically is for structuring content. So organizing and structuring content is the purview of HTML. So think about, I think the metaphor that I've used before is that HTML is kind of like the architecture of the site, or like an architect's plans for the site. So you have all this content, you want to organize it in some way that's going to be readable to your viewer. So you have to build little rooms, little compartments for the content so that it'll be more easily moved through. So it's kind of like doing like a blueprint is what HTML kind of does. It maps out the basic layout for the content. Okay. CSS does what? If HTML is the architect and maybe the builder, the contractor, CSS then is the interior design. So we're not going to leave drywall as drywall. We're going to cover the drywall with paint, with wallpaper, with some color, some texture, and that's the purview of the CSS. So even though this so the paint on the walls, the pictures on the walls, the color of the door frames, all that is an interior design choice, right? That then made this functional space a little bit more attractive, a little more comfortable to be in, a little more inviting to be in, right? So those design choices that are more in terms of color and font choice and things like that would be a matter of CSS. So one question that we might ask, because it's right there on the screen, is like if we have written content to share. We've been using Microsoft Word all our life. We're very comfortable using Microsoft Word. Why not just make that the content of our website? Why can't we just deliver all our content as a Word doc or a PDF? Right. So, for example, here's a one of my favorite posts of all events. So I just want to source them. It's sort of formatted like a web page would be anyway. But what's the difference between, and then just, you don't have to be technical, but what's the difference in terms of your experience using PDFs on a screen and ordinary web text?
Because that title written text is disconnected from other content on the website.
Okay, so it's not linked, so it's not using one of the essential affordances of web languages, right? So it's not interactive text, it's just static text, right? Okay, what else? What's another key difference between looking at a PDF of text and maybe looking at a web version of it? you'll find, with this example and others that are in the same PDF format, it's not responsive. Right, so if I were to call this up on my phone, it'd be either super tiny or chopped off. Right. So part of HTML, and so this is one of the foundations, you know, of web languages, is that it's making the content accessible through multiple generations of screens, but also multiple size devices. And now most web content that's being consumed is coming from the device, not even from the laptop, from an iPad, from a mobile phone. Most content's being consumed here, and not certainly from print, and not certainly from a desktop screen or a laptop. So part of the point of a PDF is that the layout that you have, that you put in, that you design and put into place, it'll look that way no matter where it appears. It won't respond to the device. It'll be consistent to so we call this up at home, we call this up on a much larger screen, on a laptop, and it'll still, the layout, the proportion of everything will be identical to how you saw it the first time. So it's kind of a fixed, sealed down format, which is part of its appeal, part of its function. But web text has to be responsive. So notice how the text here does adjust, right? So this is more a more responsive text because it's adjusting to the resizing of the route. That's what I mean most. Okay, so another reason why we need to think about it in terms of so part of its accessibility in a number of ways. Part of it is scannability because we read text differently off the screen than we do off of paper. So Jakob Nielsen has been studying this for quite some time, and he's studying so long he's been starting to refine his theories a bit. But studies have confirmed, and even in different languages, that when someone reads web-based content, they're not reading it in a Z pattern slowly top to bottom most of it. They're not going like this. Right, a Z pattern, in English, right? So left to right, top to bottom. They don't read that way. They read what Nielsen has designed, called the F-shape pattern, where we're more skittery, kind of looking for what we want. Because we know that if we're not finding quickly what we want, we can go very quickly through the hypertext someplace else. Right? So even when you're interested in the subject, even when you're really fresh and awake and well rested, and even if you know the content's going to be top notch, as you're getting away into that page, you're going to be scanning it first. Right? So it's not a matter of intelligence. It's a matter of we're getting the information off a backlit screen, not off light bouncing off paper. And so our eyes fatigue more quickly off these kind of screens. Even though we use these devices a lot, our eyes still fatigue more quickly. And so we're going to not waste time reading top to bottom left to right. We're going to look more in a scanning pattern, more of an F-shaped pattern. So you can sort of see the F sort of shape here, so it's kind of cool, then hot and cool. You'll see how much content's not being read from the scan, right? And there's an interesting example here that with languages that read right to left, we're seeing kind of the F in reverse. So languages that orient differently. There's still a similar, for web text, a similar pattern of reading. Right? So it's not arbitrary, not just unique to English. And, so the blue dots are where the eye is going. So it is more of that reverse left pattern. Nielsen has identified other ones, but so one of the ways, oops, go back to the right page. So part of the challenge, part of the creative burden on those of us who want to develop web content is to make it available to people. So even if they're reading quickly, even if they're reading, if they're tired, if they're rushed, they'll still get what you want them to get. They'll still get the gist of what you want them to get on that page. So look at these two examples. Let me see, let's do it this way. Pages. So this is the same text that's been formatted differently, been structured differently through the HTML. Which one would you rather read? Example A or example B? If you had to read it. It's very technical in terms of the content. So probably most of us wouldn't necessarily have a background in what is being talked about. So, but if we had to read it, which one would we rather look at? Okay, why is that the case? So why is this one more appealing to you than this one?
That one's text heavy.
Okay, it looks text heavy. So by text heavy, what do you mean by that?
A lot of words.
A lot of words.
Broken up.
A lot of words, a lot of work. If it's a big block, a big cluster of text, it's discouraging. Even if you're interested, even if you're being compelled to read the content, you're like, man, I don't want to go through that. Right? This is going to be hard enough as it is. So this seems like less words. It's not, but it seems like less. It seems like less words feels like less words. There's more white space distributed between, kind of airs things out a little bit, right? And therefore, it's more visually appealing. So before you even read the first sentence, you're already sizing up, oh my God, how much work is this going to be? Right? And so you're a little more enticed by this second example because it seems like a less concentrated block of information. Right? So the differences in those two examples was a very simple difference in HTML. Just very simple formatting differences using HTML. If you want to get a sense of the power of CSS, well beyond what we get into today, but it's a beautiful example. Just fun to look at. So all these pages I'm about to show you have the same content, so the same HTML content. But the CSS will make them that's the difference. So the difference between this and this is the CSS. So between that one and the first two is the CSS. So this is also responsive to. Oh, it's responsive, yeah. So again, the content is identical, but the CSS obviously makes some. I mean, some colors may appeal to you individually, some not. Some, you know, they clearly have different moods, different tones. So again, CSS is the styling, is the interior design, right? Well beyond decorating, it is serious, substantial design of the site in terms of the overall color. Okay, so let's get a little more practical, a little more hands-on. So this is the kind of advice I give for every workshop like this that I lead. There's no problem keeping things simple. There's no waste of time by beginning even with pencil and paper. If you're going to sketch out what you want, you try to make it happen, then you keeping it simple will help you sort of learn sort of stage by stage. But building by baby steps will allow you to troubleshoot. So instead of plundering ahead and then realizing you have 15 errors that you needed to correct and you don't know where to start, if you go on, I make one change, I test it, then I go back and adjust what I can do, and go back and make 2 more steps. That's another mistake, I go back to the step that was changed, right? Troubleshooting, baby steps allow you to troubleshoot one step at a time. Right? And so again, you have a much better sense if you made a mistake, which we will make. All of us, I made many mistakes preparing for the thing today. if you go slowly, you'll be able to figure out pretty quickly where you took that mistake. You'll be able to correct it. Again, always save your work and never be afraid to experiment, and failure is the only path to success. Jason.
One thing I want to underline is with the save your work, I'd say save it not just early and often, but as separate files. Every time you do a major change, call it draft 2, call it draft 3. Whatever your nomenclature is, call it something different. I'm currently working on a scholarly article for a journal, but it's an interactive website that I'm making. Anybody want to take a guess as to how many different versions I've got of it?
1,000?
Not that. That's good. Way to jump there. 95. I'm on the 95th version. I've only been working on it since November. And I only save never more than 2 or 3 times in a day. You know, I keep those rare for when I did a major change and things shifted, and when I think I don't want to have to figure out how to do that again. However, I got it to work in this new way. I don't want to do that again. Today, you're not going to save 7 versions.
But the files you're working with are very small. They don't take up hardly any hard drive space. Like a video file and audio file is large. So if you have 95 versions of an HTML file, that's maybe a couple of megs. It's not much.
It's smaller than a song,
Yeah,
than a single
than
image.
iTunes devices. Okay, so everyone has their practice files downloaded. Okay, I'll go ahead and open my folder. Get that ready for my end. Okay, so first of all, just going up, just so you can sort of look at what you're dealing with, open up the practice.rtf file, so just a rich text file. And it'll, unless you can read nonsense Latin, it will make no sense to you, that's okay. It's just kind of, it looks like text, but doesn't have deep meaning for us, to distract us, it's for design purposes. But so I have what here, what seems to be 5 paragraphs, relatively short paragraphs. Y'all see that? Okay. So leave that file open. So then, with the HTML file I've started for you that I'll actually play with right now is called index.html. So you can go, I won't get on Mac unless some of you are PC. You can go ahead and open up brackets. Let's do it this way. Let's go ahead and open up brackets. I've got other things it's complaining about. I'll not worry about that now. So let's go to File, Open, go to the folder that I'm working with on my desktop. Open the file called index. And so I got one started just to kind of move things along a little bit today. We could have started from scratch, but just to get things started. So one thing just to note, and one thing that's also part of best practices is to notice how to kind of leave yourself in notes while you're this isn't coding exactly, but while you're scripting or while you're putting in the commands. You see how the open caret point dash that kind of begins a comment in HTML. And John Keon, why is it good to leave comments for yourself? Or leave notes for yourself?
Because it allows me to go back to the point that I made a mistake or error, and then to fix it easily. Or it also allows it to allows the other person to work together.
Okay, so it allows someone else who might come into your project to read the code you've been using and try to see what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
But it also note to yourself to remind you, oh my gosh, that's what I was trying to do. I haven't worked on this for 6 months. What was I trying to do here? The note is just a plain language, plain way of describing this is what I want. This is what I was trying to accomplish. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the cursor in. So we have these references of line numbers. So our numbers will deviate a little bit as we get further into our page. That's fine if that happens. We'll have that reference. So I have this this range right here will be where the CSS will go. Well, we're not going to worry about that quite yet. That's where when we start spelling out some CSS, it'll go in this region here. But the main visible content on the page will be here. Will be between the two body tags. Right. Okay. So let me see if I can do this. So they have them side by side. It can be helpful so we have instructions. Okay. So the syntax for HTML is quite simple and quite predictable, and very much based on the language you're working with. So in this case, we're working with English, so it's very familiar English words. So for example, notice that the style sheet, the styling goes between two what we call tags called style, right? And that's going to be true across any page you go to. So caret style, close caret, this right here, turns on the style region of the page. It's like the on switch. And then the caret slash style turns off that section of the page. So we kind of, in this area, we'll put the CSS. In this area, after we get to this point, we'll stop the CSS. Right. So caret command, close caret turns it on, caret slash command, the close caret turns it off. So notice we have the same thing here. The body of the body text, the content we have here. Body, turn on the body of the visible HTML here, turn it off here. Right. So Jason, when I was talking to him about this on Friday, used the hamburger metaphor. So think about how a hamburger is structured. Turn on the bun, turn off the bun, turn on the condiments, turn off the condiments, turn on the condiment 2, turn on the condiments, turn on meat, turn off meat, turn on lettuce, turn off lettuce, turn off bun. Right? It's the same kind of nesting of information. Right? So that's why I had the bun slash bun there as the basic syntax. But turn on the bun of this is the top bun of the style, this is the bottom of the style, this is the top bun of the body, the bottom bun of the body. That make sense? And so pretty much, not 100%, but pretty much everything, every bit of structure we do, we'll tag it. This way, we'll start the tag, we'll begin by tagging with this, and then we'll stop with tagging with this. We'll have an on and off tag for each, almost everything we'll ask you to do today. On switch and off switch, everything that's all. Okay, so I need to get to I shouldn't have actually, we have a third screen. So right now, I'm just going to copy my contents from my RTF file. So practice RTF, let's go ahead and select it all and copy it. Go back into my page. And you can enter in spaces, that's not a problem. You can go to as many spaces as you want to, just to make some room for yourself. It'll make more in a second as I paste content in. I'm going to paste in the content. Okay, so we got to get a sense where the paragraphs end, where the lines are short, right? Get a sense of that. But this is the back end view of it. It's not how any of your viewers are going to see it unless they try to or want to. But what we can do is, again, does this only work if you have Chrome on your machine? Okay. If you have Chrome on your machine, go to File. So go ahead and save the file. Save what you've done. And then go to File, Live Preview. This will only work if you have Chrome. If you don't have Chrome, we'll give you a different solution. Okay, so who wants to read that? A is nonsense Latin, so that's also off-putting. You can zoom in, but that's not sexy. That's not invited. It's not right. It is though. It has one merit. To a degree, it is responsive. It is adjusting to the screen. But outside that, it's talking about work. I've got to learn Latin. I have no paragraph breaks to know how to shift the focus. right? So you have a question or concern?
Oh, I'm so lost.
Okay, so how can we catch you up?
I just was able to open that index dot thing. I wasn't able to open it earlier. I think I've opened it, but I don't know where I'm copying and pasting that.
Okay, the practice.rtf content, the practice file?
Yes.
The content of that file, inside the
Yes.
file, copy and paste that into your index file.
Where?
Just between the two body tags.
Between the two ones. Okay.
Yeah, if I'm going too quickly, if I need to repeat anything, please stop me, don't be shy. So worried looks are fine, but you can also raise your hand or just say, hey, wait a minute, I'm happy to review. So
Is it better for us to switch to Chrome now? Because I can't just quickly go to Chrome, I have to open all this stuff in Chrome. Is it really good for?
It should open Chrome for you if you have it installed on your machine.
It's installed on my machine,
Okay.
but if I open Chrome, I'm gonna have to go start over at Chrome.
I'm sorry.
Never mind.
what you can also do, so if you don't have Chrome on your machine or you don't want to use Chrome, what you can also do is just open up your browser. You go to File, Open File, and then go to the practice, the workshop file from today folder, and then get the index file that way. So you can do it either way. So Brackets has this feature to use Chrome, but if you want to preview it in Firefox or Safari, so are you able to, do you have this?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm not in Chrome.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. So what you'll need to do, every time you save your Brackets file, you want to come back to your browser and refresh. That's the only edit step.
So how'd you get to there from brackets?
Okay, so do you have Chrome?
I copied in, no, I don't.
Okay, so just go to your browser of your choice
Okay.
and go to File, Open. Open File. And then navigate to where your index file is saved. It should be in a folder on your desktop.
It's just a blank page.
You should save it.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to preview anything in the browser, make sure the most recent changes have been saved in your index file.
Ah, okay.
Okay. So you have the same unsettling list.
Mhm.
Okay. We all should have this unsettling list. If it looks prettier than this, you're not with us. You're working against us. Okay. Okay. What is the problem? But so when we look at it in the RTF file, the RTF file kind of gives us what seem to be paragraphs. There's spaced lines with double spacing between to indicate the paragraphs. There's no such, so that's how the RTF file understands it. It's not how the browser is. So the browser way to say, hey dude, we want one paragraph to begin here and to end here. We want the next paragraph to begin here and to end here. So assuming that the shorter lines are the end of the paragraph, and the next line then down. So, and we can also kind of guess it from line numbers. So line 16 is probably one paragraph, line 17 is probably the next paragraph, and so on. Let's chunk it out into more attractive looking paragraphs. Okay, so the on switch always begins with the open caret bracket. So because HTML is sort of very usable, very readable as a language, so we're working with English, so what do you think goes here? So body and body was one, style and style. So what would you imagine to go as this to indicate, hey, make this next bit of text a paragraph? Okay, you're thinking the right way, but you can be even more efficient. Just P for paragraph. So just the initial, just the letter P. So it's open caret P, close caret. And notice what brackets does for you. It's reminding you, hey, dude, you got to close this off at some point. I don't want to close it off where it's putting in the code. But what I can do, very simply, is just copy the /P and put it at the end of what is line 16 for me. And delete the first version of it. There we go. That's also, notice the color coding too. So my P's are blue, which means my P's are properly, there's no punctuation errors or anything, it's just probably properly formatted, right?
My paper's not blue.
Is it a color?
Yeah, I mean, the word body is blue.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Is P only for paragraph, or is it for?
The P command in HTML is
Paragraph.
so you don't have to remember the whole word, you don't have to type the whole word, you just type the one letter, and man, there you go. But it's the English word, that means the same for all people who don't know the language. Okay, so just go ahead, just to give a little taste of all the, how successful you are, go ahead and save this file. Go back to your page and refresh. And well, we have then the beginnings of a more structured document. Right, so there's more work to do to make the rest of it more accessible, but we're still making some progress. So going back to brackets. So do the same thing for the remaining lines. So for maybe line 17 and 18 and 19 and line 20. So what you can do very simply in this case, I'm going to just copy the /p first to kind of indicate that. That's not going to color code properly yet because the beginning switch is not in place yet. All right, so there's an error here because it is not finding the cap starting P, kind of cap things off. Right, I'm just putting those in place. And then I can do the same thing then with the beginning of each line. Oops, put my thing, and copy full, okay. Um,
18.
That's 18, that's 18. Thank you. So go ahead and save that. And preview. So save first, go to your browser, hit refresh, and it's not readable because we don't know the language, but it's more attractive. I might spend more time here because it's not the big, daunting gob of words. There's some breathing, some negative space is actually helpful. I think these things are helpful here, so to make it more attractive. Right. Okay, so we all should probably have roughly 5 paragraphs of content. Okay, so let's make it even more attractive. And again, if I'm going too fast at any point, please stop me. Please have me go back. So what you can do also, just to kind of make this more readable from the back end, so this is the back end of your page, you can add in additional spaces here. It won't change the formatting at all in terms of how it appears. So if this is more readable for you, then go ahead and make that change. So it's a little more attractive from our end too. So it won't be, but if you look at, if you go back and preview in Chrome or your browser, it won't be indented in. It'll be the same as you like, even after you save it. This is more just a change for your own clarity, for your own access. But it's not going to make a discernible difference on the visual content. Okay, so let's. So part of structuring is emphasizing keywords. So bold text, italicized text, things like that. Right. So how would you? And there's Jason might interrupt and say something about deprecation. We'll ignore Jason objecting about deprecation. But given how we make paragraphs, how would we make just even a single phrase or single word say bold text? Yes, that's right. So choose a phrase. I choose a phrase from my second paragraph. Right here. And so open caret B, I'm sorry, I'm typing attention. I got the closed switch to copy, delete, and paste someplace else. So just this forward phrase, should then appear in the second paragraph as bold text. So save that, preview it, and we can know. So this is, but bold text, very simple thing, very obvious thing. We all have been using it here and there throughout our writing lives. It's very important for scannability. If someone's reading quickly, you're going to see this first. If this is important information, you want them to see that first. So bold text, it seems real simple, and it is. But it's also in terms of scannability, accessibility, visual appeal, minimizing the feeling that it's going to be too much work to get the content. Bold text literally pushes the important content by thickening up the text as well. Okay, so everybody have bold text? So super simple so far. Go on then to go back to brackets. So how would we do italicized text? Wow, that's right. So I'm going to go to the next paragraph and do that. Do the same. So now the second phrase in my third paragraph should be italicized. Save it. Preview it. There we go. Bam.
I have a question. So if I don't want to have bold text on the comma, then do I put that?
So this comment here?
Yeah.
So
If
you
I
want-
don't want that to be
Oh, okay.
bold text, then I just put that
Outside the line.
inside of the.
Yeah, you just either move the end brackets or just move the comma. Yeah, simple. But yeah. So whatever is inside the B tag is will be bold. Anything you don't want to be bold should be outside the B tag. Anybody else any questions? Okay, so let's get fancy and interactive. So for our purposes, there are two kinds of links that we can learn about today, for example. There's internal links and external links. So an internal link would be to what?
Another document on your website?
Absolutely, another document inside your website. So linking another element inside your site that you probably put there yourself. And that, by extension, the external link would then take you to another content that you didn't develop or somehow hosted on somebody else's site. Right? So let's do the external version first. Okay. So the syntax is a little bit less intuitive, but once you know it, you'll know it forever because it's otherwise very simple. I point to it. If you go back to basic formatting using HTML, it's the caret. So it's still the on and off, but to indicate a link, you're not using the L, that's used for something else. You're using A. A means linking. And the history of that I don't understand, but it will always do the same job. So the A ref is a hypertext reference. So I'm referring to this hypertext document. And then where we want to go goes inside the quotation marks. Then we turn it off. Okay, so I'll show you. So let's choose a phrase. I'll choose a phrase for my fourth paragraph. My tradition inside brackets. A phrase inside my fourth paragraph. And let's link to TCU's homepage. Recently redesigned after 45 years of being outdated. Recently refreshed. So thank goodness for that. Okay, so I'm gonna make this short sentence right here, I'm gonna turn that into a link that will take me then to the TCU website. So open Curt. I can go down that, it's giving me options. Notice the first option is A, hey, go ahead and make a link, so A, go down and choose the A option. Space, H, and again, notice the assistance that bracket is giving you. So what I want to do is I want to go to an external, or take an external link first. So we need to have the full web address, including the http:// before. So inside the double quotes, so open Curt A href equals. So I'm referring to this hypertext document over here. Inside the double quotes, put in the full http, http://, then www.tcu.edu. So outside then, we're not quite done, we're close. Outside then, the second double quote, I want to close the caret. It's reminding me that I need to close off then the link statements. So I'll come back, delete that, and then put that at the end of this sentence here. So now the second sentence in my fourth paragraph should be a live link that will take me to TCU website. Let's see if that's true. So save your index file, save your brackets file. So it's been recolored and underlined, which is a standard kind of formatting for a link. You can change that if you want to, but it's the standard formatting is kind of the blue and the underline. So click on it. And what do you know? We are live linked. Okay, and if you want to get back to your page, just hit the back arrow. So does anyone not have a live link to TCU? Okay, so let me just point out one thing I should have mentioned earlier. So we're looking at your content that you've developed today in a browser. Right? Is that content online? Okay, so how can we confirm from the browser that this is not a live content that's online on some web server? Jason?
Check the URL.
Check the URL. So notice here, this is the pathway. A URL is basically a pathway. So the pathway here is taking me to a file on my computer. So this is a point that confuses my students pretty frequently. It looks like a live site in my browser. Well, it does, but you haven't sent it anywhere but your desktop. So this link right here would do me no good. Send me an email with that link. I'll say thanks for the email. I can do nothing with that because it's just taking me to a location on your desktop that I don't have access to. I don't have permission to access. So this is not a hosted website. It's just a page that's being previewed basically in a web browser. Does that make sense? So if you're ever confused as to which version you're looking at, check the URL. And if it says file here, that means the pathway is taking us to your project, your draft version on your computer. Okay, let's go back to brackets. We're doing well on time, I think. Okay, let me then go, so this is an external link, because we can tell because it's got the full HTTP here, right, so we know we're going to someone else's site there. Here, I want to make another link that's going to be internal. So in your folder that you downloaded, there should be a file called page2.html. You don't need to open it, but just know that it's there. And it should be there. I hope you haven't deleted it. So let's reference that. Let's reference that page. So same thing. We're making a hypertext reference. A space href equals. And notice here that that's actually giving me options of files inside that same folder. So I don't, because I have the file in the same folder that my project is in, I can just click on that there. Close off the caret, move the /a to another point down the road. I'll take the comma out, move the comma over here because that probably is more attractive. Save that. Preview. So here's my TCU link here. Here's the link to my. So it's not attractive. It's unsightly text, but it's still going to a page called page 2. So the syntax is very similar. It's simpler here because you have less of a pathway to take. Because it's right there in the same folder as your other files. Right, so if this is in a subfolder, you have to have a subfolder name there, but if it's not a subfolder, which is not the case, you say, give me this file. They can search that file. So far, so good? Okay. So one more bit of HTML before we look into some CSS. We have a little more fun with this thing. Okay, so web documents, web pages are multimedia, multimodal. So it's not just text that we're working with, but text and image, text and video, text and audio. So there's different ways of communicating coming into a single web page. So let's go ahead and insert an image. That's something I provided a couple for you there. So I'm going to go back up and I'm going to make some space between my first 2 paragraphs. And I'm going to, at that point, then insert an image. So always open, have the open caret to begin the instruction. So then what do you think I might start typing? Okay, I. In this case, it's kind of an abbreviation, so you have the option. So not iframe, I layer, it's img for it. So it's kind of condensed. And it's actually one more thing too. So img space src, so basically image source. The source of the image comes from this location. Right, so these are all pathways. So this is the pathway to this HTML page. This will be the pathway then to the image we want to see. Okay, then also equals, and also, so I'm gonna choose Beagle because I love beagles. I have a beagle. I love her. And let's go ahead and stop there. We're not finished with this instruction, but let's go ahead and see what happens. So, and for some reason, and Jason may know the answer to this, we don't need to have an off switch for the image. Because we're not turning text into some other kind of element. Right? We're not throwing text, we're just inserting an element. So just pop this image here at this place after the first paragraph. So there's no on and off switch necessary in this case. So go ahead and save that and preview it. And look at the beagle. But the beagle's problematic. The beagle's imperfect. What's wrong with the beagle?
It's too big.
Too big. It's a monstrous beagle. Right. But it's there. The first paragraph, beagle picture, second paragraph. So it's too large. We have to scroll too much to get back to the important text. So it's a good, nice resolution image, but it's also too big for our purposes. So let's go back then and format it a bit further. So I'm going to go back inside the caret bracket. So before the caret bracket closes, I'm going to then. So I think the original resolution was probably 700 plus or so fairly large. I'm going to put in just a command to adjust its width, but also scale proportionally. So the word width will help to scale the width. Equals, quote unquote, And then in this case, let's just type in 300 pixels. So 300 px inside. So in addition, so going back inside the carets, width, the word width equals quote unquote 300 px for pixels. And we can size it in different ways, and we'll talk about why that would be helpful in a second. But we'll see if that makes a difference. And it'll probably help us to also be imperfect. It'll be less monstrous, but still not perfect. So it's better, right? But what would be an improvement still? Suggestions? I'm sorry? I have the words around it?
Yeah, something.
Okay. Yeah, it's called wrapping the text. So wrapping the image inside the text, inside the paragraph. Okay. So going back then to here. So here, basically we want to align it different. So right now it's aligned to the right. I think it's just simply we type in align equals, align to the left right now, I'm sorry. Align equals quote unquote, when it goes up to the right. Let's see what happens there. And the color coding seems to be working, so there we go. And so we get the full impact of that cute little beagle picture, but it's more seamlessly incorporated into the rest of it. It's not, it doesn't interrupt the content, it just gives a little bit of visual variety, right? There's actually some nice white space already part of the image, right?
Can you go back to the online?
So how do we get there? So all I did was add in this phrase right here. So align equals quote unquote right.
Is the spacing important between each? So in other words, when you end the beagle.jpg and you end the quote, there's a space before you say
Oh,
there's a space after the quote before you say align. Are the spaces important or not?
I don't think so. I just one space should do it just to make it readable. If they're all close together, it'd be hard to read.
Okay.
But if you had 2 or 3 spaces, I don't think that makes a difference.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
So the image is locally on the computer. Once
Yes.
you upload this code onto a website, onto a whatever live thing,
Right.
would the link still work if the image is on?
Excellent question. So, fantastic
You're
question.
making me
Stan.
smiling and just grinning. That's such a good question. I totally get it.
So go ahead and ask it again so we'll hear what you just asked.
Oh, so in this practice file, we're linking this image on a local file on the computer. So once this file is uploaded onto the web page, would the link still work if it's local?
If you just do the index file by itself,
Right.
it will not. So you'll have to basically do the whole folder of content. So
Everything.
folder on your desktop needs to be basically duplicated to the folder on the hosting suite.
Okay. Okay.
But that way, if the folders, there's no like new subfolders inside,
Yeah.
the pathway will still be the same.
Okay.
So this basically says, look inside the same folder for page called page 2.
Okay.
So if you've made that duplicate folder on the web host,
Yeah.
then there's still going to be that page by that name in that same folder, so
Okay.
it shouldn't be an issue. Same thing is true with the picture. Right. But very, very thoughtful question. Very good.
If the content changes, but then it will automatically change.
Another excellent question. So you get a site developed, you're proud of it, you want to launch it, you make it live, so you duplicate the folder for a host. But then you say you catch a typo in your content, you go to practice and change it. It's changed, but it hasn't been reposted, right? So it's not an automatic. If you're changing it on your desktop or your laptop, you have to then still send it the changes, the updates back to the server, so it will reflect the corrected typo or whatever content. So that's also part of the work of it. Once we get to that point, there's really 2 versions. There's the desktop local version as the project file for development, for your eyes only as you're developing the content. And then there's the content you want live. So there may be like a 3rd page you're still working on that you don't know when you're going to finish, but you know the first 2 pages are fine, so you get the first 2 pages posted, and then when the 3rd page is ready, you finish it, on your local folder and then put it live in the local folder, and when that's ready to go. So very good question, very good question. A couple more quick things about, so we are talking in terms of accessibility. So one best practice when using images is that not everybody who's using web content has the same visual ability. Some may be visually impaired, who may be using what's called a screen reader. It'll basically read the content for you from, the browser can read the content for you out loud. So you need to sort of indicate, when there are elements that are purely visual, like a video picture, you need to indicate basically script out what you want the screen reader to read when it encounters that element on your page, right? So it's called the alt text, or the alternative text. So very simple. It wants me to also put in the alt right here. So the alt means alternative. So this is the alternative text that will be read by the screen reader if it's activated. And then I'll type in something simple and descriptive. Video picture would be fine, because that's what it is. Right? You can say more if you want to, but you don't have to. But that is part of the best practices. So not all visual content will be equally available to all users of your site. So the alt tags is one way to ensure they'll still have a sense of everything's on the page in addition to the visual content. Okay, so questions. Questions we had so far have been great. There's a lot of room for more. So you see how the HTML has structured the site. It's made it interactive, but also given the visual appeal, basic visual layout to it, right? So let me do one more quick thing. I'm just going to copy some text and duplicate it. So I'm just taking a phrase, and then I'm putting default header tags around it. And I'll show you what it looks like in a second. So I put in carrots, H1 for the first little header, a phrase, and then H2, close that carrot. So let's get a preview of what that looks like. I'll show you what I'm doing in a second. So then we do have headers here. That one way to make headers. And you can make it, if you want it to be larger but small, but not as big as that, you can try H2 or H3 for subheaders. So like the title of the page might be an H1 heading, right? So that's just part of the default language of HTML is to have the H1, H2 levels for individual headings and subheadings. Okay, so let's add some CSS. Yes.
I just want to add one thought because I have students that miss this a lot. H1 does not mean the first heading. It means the first level of headings. So you can have three H1s throughout, right? That's that top level heading, and three H2s. But I have students who regularly will go, okay, so the first section should be H1, and the next section should be H2, and the next section, and what you see is this gradual, like, as it kind of goes towards the right-hand side of the screen as it does, right? You can have as many H1s as you want.
Yes.
It's not just a note. I like it.
So let me just go ahead and make that point with H2. So again, it's not going to be the second header, it's the second level of significance. So the subheader basically. So it helps if you look at your typing. Yes, the line. So again, this is also part of scannability. So one chunk of information, a subtitle, next chunk of information helps improve scannability. Right? That's what it does. Like bold text, it helps to push and show, hey, a really cool paragraphs, I'll let them encounter some different kinds of content because of the this. So it's also part of scannability. Okay, so without further delay, let's get to the CSS. So we're going to go up to the style section. So this will be stuff we're entering in that won't be visible as we phrase it. Right, so this command for putting in the style things that won't be visible because it won't be immediately visible because it won't be appearing within the body buttons, the body tags. Okay, so so say for some particular reason you want all your links, no, all your bold text to be purple. And we get the default here is black, but you want to change the color of, you have a larger color scheme in mind, and you want to make every bold text, you want to make it purple, right? So you type in a B. So this might, every time you use the B, the resulting text will always be bold text, but also a specific color. So the punctuation here is the curly bracket. We can space it down a little bit. The color just do it by itself. So B, open curly bracket, close curly bracket, some spacing is going to type in the word color. Colon. And you have these options to choose from. Notice that they may be, let's start again, I'm sorry. And you have a bunch to choose from, it goes on and on and on and on. So I'll try blue violet because I cut it perfectly. And then end it with a semicolon. So this is easy punctuation to forget, but it won't work unless you have it in place. So basically the instruction is a command, and then the value you want to return to. So color, full, colon, command, so color choice, semicolon, right? And that's between two curly brackets. So go ahead and then just save that and preview your page. And there you go, your text is purple. But now if you make anything else, if you make anything else bold, so if I make, say, this last line bold, save that, it's purple too, right? So we're attaching that style to all things that are tagged that way. So it's, it is super efficient, because by default it'll go to black instead of saying every time you make bold text, hey, in this line, this text I want to be purple too. You just make, hey, whenever B shows up, dude, make that text purple. And you can override that to have alternatives too if you have reason to. So this is one way to be very efficient in terms of your formatting too. Right, everything, if you have a style color choice in mind, then you want to attribute it to a certain region or certain elements, just put it to the CSS. So let's try this. Let's try the same thing. So say, for example, this isn't necessarily good design, but it's enough to make the. And we could change the font kind here. We could make a lot of different changes. I'm just going to show you a different option here. Well, let's do this. Let's make another choice. Let's make another change here. So going back to our example. So you notice this is what's called a serif font. And you know what a serif is? You know what a serif is? There's little extenders that come off the D's or the I's, a little more stylized, whether they have little feet or little hats on them. That means it's a serif. So let's choose for every time we have a bold text, let's make it purple, but let's make it non-serifed. Let's take away the serifs.
For bonus points, those are references to angels' wings. Like a
seraphim?
Like seraphim and cherubim.
So here I'm typing in font hyphen family colon. I have several choices, but I'm going to choose the sans serif. So sans is French for without. And make sure you're ending it with a semicolon. And that way, you save it, you preview it, and the text is quite different than the body text.
Can I point out one other thing?
Sure.
Where did that font come from? Where does it exist?
Google.
Basically, yeah. Well, it exists in the browser or on your computer. And so it'll pull it from, what that means is it may show up on every single one of your computers in a different font, depending on what you have set as your sans serif font. And typically that'll come with kind of the same set, but you can change that. You can go to your browser and change what your default fonts are. And all of a sudden your all the websites will look like they're your font.
So, and you could name, identify, like Gill Sans or Baskerville or Times New Roman or whatever. You can specify fonts if you want to. But this is usually the kind of. So, yes.
So each style has to be in a different line.
I think for readability, I think this kind of makes the break. But for readability, it helps to be in separate lines.
So you can go to the.
I think you should, if you backspace between the same line, it should. This is the semicolon that indicates the change. Okay, so say for example we want to make all our link text italics. Again, probably not a good choice design-wise, but if we can do it, we have the power, we have the ability. So how would we make links italics? There we go. Well, eyes will be involved, but how else? How do we begin? So using this as a model, how do we begin that that instruction below?
What's the tag for link?
So every time B comes up, we want B to look this way. So every time A comes up, then we want it to be italicized. So A, curly bracket, close curly brackets. Oh shoot, what is it?
Ooh, this is a good chance to just show them what you do when you can't remember what something is.
I'm gonna try font style. That's something. There we go. I was right. I guessed I was right. So it's a very important embarrassing moment that I didn't come to. I don't have these commands memorized. I know the basic syntax, which you see is pretty simple. And if brackets doesn't give me the assistance, I can Google it and find it pretty simply. And we'll show you a resource before we go where you can get more information. So brackets is great because it's pretty good at guessing what you want to put in place. But if it's not making suggestions for you, you can always Google it too. So this way, every link, so external or external, it doesn't matter. Every time we see the A content being tagged as A or /A, it should be accordingly italicized. And what do you know? Right. So everything that gets that receives the A tag moving forward for the rest of the project, or the rest of this page anyway, will receive the italics. So again, super efficient. Okay. So let me do. We're getting kind of close on time. Let me do one more thing. So we're seeing the merits of white space, right? So the short paragraphs, images that kind of break up the verbal clutter, short paragraphs, heading. The white space makes it more appealing. The negative space, the empty space makes it more inviting. Right? It makes us want to hang out a bit longer. Maybe not that much longer, but somewhat longer because it doesn't seem like so much work. But notice how, so this is responsive to a degree. It's not perfect. It's not responsive in the most ideal sense because the picture doesn't change sizes. But the text is adjusting. But notice how slender the margins are on that left and right margins are still pretty cramped, right? So let's go ahead and air things out that way. So let's add a little more negative space on this side and this side. And we'll have a little more narrow sort of stream of text in between. So, we're gonna make a new kind of element called a div, which is we can make sort of like little sub-containers, and we can format them however we want to. So let's make a div, and we'll just call it container, just to be real clear. So we'll indicate that with a pound sign to begin with, and then just type in container, and the same curly brackets. But here we want to say, I guess it'd be margin.
Margin or padding?
They both would do it. Let's do margin. So we want to basically air out the margin in this case. We want to introduce a sense of visible margin. Type in the word margin. But we don't want to necessarily air it out on all four sides. We just want to air it out to the left and right. So do we have margin would hit all four sides, or you can choose specific size to it. So I'm going to choose margin left. And I'm going to do here, let's say 15%. Let's try 10%. Yeah, okay. So I can do pixels if I wanted to, but I want it to be responsive. So it'll take up 10% of the available screen space. Will be empty. The margin to the left will be 10% of the available screen space. So 10%, semicolon. Then I'll do the same thing for margin right. And I can make this, I can have a different number if I wanted to, but I want to have some sense of symmetry. So percent. Make sure the code bracket is there. Okay. So we'll save that, preview that, and nothing's happened. Why is nothing happened? I know that. But why is nothing happened? I made this beautiful container, so what's my error?
No, you didn't.
I kind of did. So I created this container that has this padding or this margin on the other side, this space on the other side. The problem is there's nowhere to be found in the visible part of the side. It's just instructions when someone calls upon it. So I need to go back to my body content, and then what of this content do I want to be inside the container? This is part of the visual content, right? So after the word body, I'm going to type in carrots, div, class equals, quote unquote, and just the word container, you only did the pound sign or the hashtag, those carrots. And then I'm going to put the closed div before the body, the slash body. Yes.
ID.
Yes. I'm sorry, I changed the word class, div class to div ID. That is correct.
It's also the most common mistake I make all the time,
Yeah.
switching class and ID.
Right. So go ahead and save that. So now inside the body, there's another large element called container. And inside all of that, then there'll be the concept we kind of pushed in a little bit to have the 10% margin on both sides. And I'll show you the difference of it's making sense. But go ahead and preview that, and that's even better, right? That's even better. And maybe you want to make it even larger. Because again, white space means that space I don't need to worry about. You don't have to think about it. Right? If I'm not working too hard, I'm happy. I want to be here longer. If it's all cramped together in a single block or just double space blocks and that's it, say no, I don't want to spend time here. But there's images, there's color, there's headers and subheaders, there's white space.
So, sorry, I just want to point out one other thing, that the divs are just so helpful because they don't do anything to the HTML. So you can put anything inside a div.
Right.
And yet you're not notice with the bold, when we wanted to format the bold, we had to make something bold first to then format it. But we could just make the first 2 paragraphs inside of a div. And if we don't add any styling in the style to that, it doesn't affect the HTML, nothing ever changes.
Let me show you just one more quick thing.
Group divs, we can do all kinds of things with this.
So just to kind of prove the point, I'm going to put something in between the top body tag and the first div. So I'll say that this content is not in the container. Save it, preview it, so you can sort of see that what the container is, where it starts and ends. So it is time to go. I'm happy to hang out and answer questions or even talk a bit longer. I've kind of warmed up to it. I'm kind of with zone, so I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes. But if you need to run, because it is time to go, you're welcome to come back up.